Thank you, Vipin, for joining me for the Breakfast Club. All views and opinions is personal. Nothing kind of represents company and employer opinions. What's keeping you busy these days?
So my name is Vipin Mohan. I am the global segment lead for containers at Amazon Web Services. I've been spending a lot of time, helping customers solve problems as they cope with this new situation. On a personal front, I'm, getting to spend more time than usual with my family, and I'm also, stepping in to help out with my community, helping, my people on my community to find jobs, prepare for interviews, review resumes, anything that I can do to support them.
I mean, this is kind of the Breakfast Club, and so if we were sitting kind of, a nice diner, what would I see on the table, man?
Normally, it's usually a bowl of oatmeal when I'm, in a hurry to get to work. But if I'm feeling special and you and I have a chance to chat, it's going to be a nice veggie omelet. I love those.
If I were to kind of tell, Vipin claim to fame is...
One of the things I'm really proud of is I actually learned swimming when I was 29 years old. Compare that with my 2-year-old daughter who's actually starting to swim right away. But I'm proud that, I learned the skill, and it's also given me the confidence to, go out on scuba diving expeditions, snorkeling trips. It's been a lot of fun.
So basically you have a plan to kind of, after this lockdown is removed, to do like scuba diving?
Waiting for it, yes.
Test your emotional kind of reflex. OPA.
Fine-grained policy control for cloud.
Kubernetes.
Open source container orchestration.
Istio.
Service mesh for application level networking.
CNCF.
A rapidly growing open source community. KubeCon comes to mind as well.
Shift left.
Simple term for a very important security practice.
Everybody thinks about Corona. From your perspective, like day after, what would that be?
I think in the current situation, it's most important for all of us to make sure everybody in our family, in our communities are safe and healthy. But the day after is going to be interesting. Nobody knows what the new normal could look like. But I do believe that this coronavirus pandemic has in some sense pressed the fast forward button on history. We've seen a lot of changes that would normally have taken years of debate, discussion, dissent, getting implemented overnight. And I think we'll see more of those changes happening. On the lighter side, I'm reading that babies that are born during and after the pandemic will be the coronials generation.
And that's a good one.
Yeah, and a lot of us are resorting to in-home attempts at haircuts.
This is homemade haircut.
If you try one and it doesn't pan out exactly the way you want it to, you can always call it the Corona cut.
Grab a hat and hide it.
That works.
We had containers, yeah. We're going to keep containers and Kubernetes. Your perspective, like cloud and containers like AWS, and you see kind of a very wide prism of what the future holds.
Container technology has fundamentally changed the way we look at infrastructure. With containers, developers now have a greater agility with which they can build applications. There's greater portability for moving applications across different environments. There's also consistency to deployments, and it's brought open source technologies to the forefront of enterprise strategy across the globe. And lastly, when people look at security for containers and microservices, there's a completely different angle to it. It's all about like continuous security and continuous monitoring that's key to a microservices architecture. And I see Kubernetes as at the core of this new cloud native architecture and infrastructure. Kubernetes is beautiful. It enables containers to be deployed and run in a very uniform manner, and it does that by clustering infrastructure resources for hosting applications. Beauty of Kubernetes is that it's self-healing, it's extensible, it scales applications automatically, and it provides a consistent API interface across different environments. I think this is going to evolve. We're going to see a lot of like serverless containers that being used a lot. The big advantage of serverless Kubernetes, I think, is going to be that customers do not have to be experts at Kubernetes operations.
I take Fargate as an example of simplification. Like you can use Kubernetes, but you don't need to take care of the nodes. Do you see like an evolution
happening right now? And AWS launched Fargate at reInvent last year for EKS. So customers can now use Amazon EKS to run Kubernetes pods on AWS Fargate. And it's the serverless compute engine that's been built on AWS. Looking beyond, I've been reading about this new thing called unikernels, which are currently in experimental stages. So they're an interesting technology from a cloud native standpoint, and unikernels essentially shrink the surface area and the resource utilization.
Early days Docker and stuff like that, unikernels did kind of emerge. I think that even Docker acquired Alpine at some point to kind of build this type of technology, but I think that this ecosystem never took this direction at this point. But I don't know, maybe Firecracker, containers, and kind of building this new breed of like super minimal, super hardened workload compute type. I can definitely relate to that. I mean, this is something that puzzles me, like DevSecOps. Different people, different opinions. What is this thing?
To me, DevSecOps, is the philosophy of integrating security practices within the DevOps process. I think DevSecOps is a natural and necessary response, Gabi, to the bottleneck effect we've kind of seen with legacy security models on the modern continuous delivery pipeline.
I oftentimes like to kind of think about it as like new era SDLC, just with a cooler name. Like, these days, everything you can put like ops into that, like Corona ops, GitOps, DevSecOps. Politically incorrect. So open source, it's, I would say, innovation, and on the other hand, it can be a mayhem. Attackers building Ruby on Rails libraries with similar names, like, changing O's to zeros, dashes to underscores, and creating libraries that eventually landed on builds, which leverage that to mine coins with crypto mining. What the hell is going on with this open source? I mean, good, bad, evil.
A lot of AWS services have actually been built on top of open source projects. Like Kubernetes is a classic example. EKS was built on top of Kubernetes. We have RDS that was built on top of MySQL. Overall, I think open source is very important to the developer community, and I don't see or believe it's going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a driving force. But even if you take like Kubernetes, I mean, if you look at the dependency libraries that Kubernetes has, like who knows what exactly is happening inside those libraries. And some of them are Instagram or Facebook age, where the number of stars you have on your Git repo, should we treat it as like quality? Should we treat it as popularity? And it's really hard to kind of figuring out whether this is going somewhere good or this is kind of the next. It's not even the next, it's already the present challenges that we have with open source. So, and I definitely relate to kind of what you say, that projects like Apache, Hadoop or Redis or whatever, these are mature, well-maintained projects, but those little ones become something that, it's really a risk whether you want to adopt or not adopt. And
it's important, overall to have some kind of governance for the open source projects. And it's also key to have, things like open policy agent or compliance to be enforced, so that when a developer, picks up and starts using an open source project, they're not doing so independently. You need to have those guardrails, and I believe there should be a shared responsibility there between the developer and the open source community. In general, if you think about it, the world at large wants to do good, but there are bad actors, and we as developers need to guard against those. So it's important to have those checks and balances and the right tools that will ensure that you are not using any malicious libraries that you brought up.
And you feel like the tools that are out there are sufficient?
This thing brings to mind something, Gary. My dad says you can never prevent thieves. You can only make the lock stronger. So there are going to be bad actors, and we will have tools that keep building on top of what existing solutions. I don't think there will be an end point to that.
That's a good point. I mean, the cat and mouse thing with hackers and protection systems. I don't know where I heard this on I think on a TED kind of where hackers should be considered as the immune system of software.
And the antibodies are, I'm assuming, the guardrails we put in.
Yeah, definitely. So if you were able to go back in time, what would that journey kind of take you, and changing stuff, like what would that be?
Everything in the technology space and the cloud technology space has evolved so rapidly. It's been in the past 10, 15 years, and they've developed into the technologies they are today because of where they started and how they evolved. So I really wouldn't change a thing about technology wise.
I would definitely go back like 3 months in time, and that guy that eat that bat for breakfast, I would definitely kind of go back in time. And
I totally agree. Totally agree with that. Yes.
If there's any kind of entrepreneur out there planning to build container technology, you definitely kind of someone he needs to kind of build a product and end up in your lap and in front of you. So what would be your advice?
It's important to start with security right from the get-go. It could be an orchestrator, it could be a monitoring solution, it could be any kind of solution. But it's important to make sure that security is kind of ingrained within the tool or within the process, so that it's you address things proactively than reactively.
Famous last words, Vipin. Thanks really for kind of joining. From your perspective, is there anything I should have asked you?
We're seeing a lot of customers and enterprise organizations move towards microservices. I think it's really important to call out that there is really no one size fits all when it comes to modernizing applications. Organizations and developers need to thoroughly evaluate their application landscape and figure out what fits their needs and what unique solution would solve their problems. Now that could be containers, it could be serverless, could be microservices, could be monoliths even. So it's very important to understand that and build your solution based on top of that.
Vipin, infinite thank you.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.